Welcome back. A $1 trillion+ spending bill, tariffs against China, looming trade wars, a porn star, playmate, McMaster fired, Bolton hired. The president needs a new defense lawyer. Did you look up and wave as Air Force One just flew by us? The president on his way to Mar-a-Lago. He just landed after an exhausting week that isn't over quite yet. Stormy Daniels' interview airs on Sunday on 60 Minutes. But how do we all separate that reality show from the real impact of the new spending plan and sticking it to China and the tariffs? As we said, the president needs a new lawyer in the Russia case, quitting, and the questions all above might have all on the congressional and state house races here on the Suncoast. Joining us for more is Rod Thompson, who is with the RevolutionaryAct.com, Cheryl Wilson, the chair of the Manatee Democratic Party, and Jacob Ogles, political professor.
Yeah, why not?
Editor at SRQ Magazine. Okay, well, I mean, I'm out of breath because there's just so much has gone on this week. But let's start with the top story: $1.3 trillion in spending. And Rod, you know, John Kennedy, who is the senator from Louisiana, Republican, said he feels like this is mushroom politics. He was kept in the dark and fed manure.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. This is the worst way to run a government and to build a budget. You put together 2,200 pages of budget information, which is thick and difficult to get through, and then you give essentially 1,000 minutes for Congress to read it and review it and look at it.
This is a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican President. This is what you wanted for many years.
So as you know, of course, for a budget, it does take 60 votes. So they had to get 9 Democrat votes. And that's part of the deal. I think in that deal, to get those 9 Democrat votes, they gave away everything except the increased defense spending. This budget is so bad for Republicans that I think when you see Mitch McConnell and you see Chuck Schumer laughing and slapping each other on the back, you know that we all just got robbed.
But
and we did.
Keep in mind, a lot of our wonderful dedicated viewers are Republicans just like you, and they cringe when we criticize this Congress and this president too much.
Well, I think that I don't think they need to now, because this is bad, and I can give you the measurements for it. When you have Rush Limbaugh saying Trump stabbed me in the back, when you have Ann Coulter saying President Schumer got a great deal, when I was listening to some talk radio today so that I could get a feedback on it, overwhelmingly negative. These are base voters. Same thing with the people I'm talking to around here, base voters. This would be the one thing that could really help Democrats in November is if we depress Republicans. This budget could do it.
Cheryl, is this a great deal for Democrats because this has over $1 billion for a border wall you do not want, and it does nothing to deal with the DACA
I'm not worried about that, Alan, because Mexico will pay for that wall. So that money's not in there for us.
I didn't see the line item for that.
Didn't find that. I think Trump was trying to make this just a continuation of his I'm going to say it, hate policies to harm others, and he reverted back to the expense of the military to pull him out, to base it on. The only thing that I can say in defense is that Democrats hung tough on some of the things that have always been important to Democrats. It isn't anything new that we want to fight the opioid crisis. It's nothing new that we want to protect the environment. So some of those cuts that he wanted to see didn't happen, and I think that's where the Democrats came through.
Jacob, what do you make out of it that yesterday, or late yesterday, early this morning, the White House was saying the president will sign this, and then there's a little bit of drama where the president comes out and says, well, not so fast, I may not sign this, and then he does sign it. Mm-hmm. And it kind of led a lot of people in the administration and out of it kind of, wondering what was going on.
Well, I think what you have here is kind of this violent clash between the message that the president was elected on and the practicality of getting something through Washington. The whole drain the swamp message was about how people just don't like the way Washington works. Many of the things that Rod is talking about right now are it's why there's a distaste for the federal government at a broad level, certainly among the president's base. He was very much the anti-establishment candidate coming in, and here we see what's basically an establishment bill come out of Congress. What can he do? Can he veto the budget? I'll tell you, that creates a whole lot of issues with kicking that back to Congress. But to sign it means, in some degree, going against everything he stood for on the campaign trail.
We only have a few seconds, but Jacob referenced the swamp, which Republicans like to talk about. But again, Rod, this is a Republican House and Senate.
Clearly,
and
there's a
White
lot
House.
of Republicans that are part of the swamp. I tweeted out last night on this that it's official, the swamp is undrainable. This was the opportunity to really make some changes. I think this budget is showing we're not making those changes. Look, he didn't even get real border wall stuff. That is barely a drop in the bucket. Sanctuary cities going to get all of their money. Planned Parenthood's going to get all of its money.
Okay.
Bad deal. Good Democratic budget, though.
Obviously, we have only scratched the surface here, and we'll have much more on the Week in Washington right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about the Week in Washington, and joining us for more is Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, Cheryl Wilson, the chair of the Manatee Democratic Party, and Jacob Ogles, political editor of SRQ Magazine. If you could see all the papers on the trapezoid here, there is so much going on right now, and we got to start with what's been happening. It's almost like I don't even know how to explain it. Last night, a Playboy playmate did a long interview about her alleged affair with Donald Trump before he was president. Coming up tonight, or Sunday night on 60 Minutes, is Stormy Daniels. And people may say this is superficial stuff. Rod, with the Stormy Daniels situation, at least there is a legal aspect to that, and that is if she was paid off to prevent something from coming up 2 weeks before the election. And that's the way election laws work. If a campaign receives something that is something of value to them, that's an election law violation. That's the legal issue. But it seems whether you're watching 60 Minutes or the Playmate, you want to take a shower.
So the legal issue is a bunch of series of ifs and a lot of hopefuls. So I don't really see that as a big deal. Certainly not something that most Americans care about. The issue with Trump and his dalliances with women that are not his wife is pretty well established, and I think baked into the cake. I don't think that changes a lot of people. I don't like it at all. I think it's morally reprehensible for a married man to be doing that. But he's not the first president.
Right. But you have written about this that as much as you are disgusted by it, there is a bigger picture, and it's the Supreme Court, and
yes.
It's a lot of other things. But obviously, the other side looks at that kind of position with hypocrisy, because a lot of conservatives talk about family values, and this stuff, if true, is flat out disgusting.
Yes, it's flat out disgusting. Like I said, it's morally reprehensible. And you're right. It's not hard to look at us and see hypocrisy there. However, you always have to remember, number one, for me, President Trump was my last choice in the Republican primary, but he was my only choice and easily my only choice in the general. And that's where a lot of Republicans came down. If it was between our least favorite Republican being elected president or Hillary Clinton, it was a no-brainer for us. It was going to be Donald Trump. And his policies in 2017 have proven that out.
I think that we as Democrats could say the very same thing. This is surreal to think that we're sitting here talking about a president's relationship with a porn star and with a playmate. But it is about other things. It is about the Supreme Court. I would make that very same argument, that there are other considerations that this president has just completely put the country and our institutions in jeopardy. So the fact that he won't step up and end this issue with the porn stars and the Playboy bunnies is just allowing him to take the focus off what he's not getting done or what he's trying to get done and for a while at least failing at.
Jacob, does this hurt the president in any kind of way in an area like this?
In an area like this, it might be less likely to hurt the president, but I think the real issue is that it hurts a lot of the Republicans who are standing by the president. And that's the real reason Democrats are making a lot of noise about these issues right now. It's about being able to look at a lot of Republicans, many of whom voted to impeach President Bill Clinton over his sordid moral problems. And it's just a way of calling them hypocrites as we're going into the midterms.
But you know, Bill Clinton was impeached on the charge of lying.
Right, lying under oath.
He was, yes, lying under oath. He was not impeached upon the issue of what he did with an intern.
So is the bottom line getting the president to a deposition on one of these cases?
Which is why we've people like me saying he cannot ever talk to Mueller.
I'm not talking about Mueller. I'm talking about
Congress.
Stormy or
if Bill Clinton, who was going to try and break down the meaning of is, got caught up doing it, then clearly Trump would be caught up somehow.
But the $130,000 that you alluded to, that may be campaign funds,
now, that's a lot of ifs and hopes.
That's something that needs to be investigated.
all right, White House comings and goings. The National Security Advisor out just a couple of days after the president said the National Security Advisor was in. He's being replaced by John Bolton, John Bolton is known as a very smart but very strident person who has a lot of people worried. Rod?
No, he shouldn't. They shouldn't be worried about him. Bolton has shown himself to be smart and right a lot of the time. He is certainly more hawkish than his predecessor.
He's called for a war with North Korea and perhaps Iran.
In the right context. You see, here's the thing with Bolton, and I think that this is where he fits with Trump a lot better. And that's that he believes that negotiating with our enemies and those that are dangerous to us from a position of strength gives us a better negotiating position than negotiating through giving them whatever they want, which is what the previous administration and the North Korea administrations have done. So in that way, he is much more aligned. I think when you have Pompeo at State and you have Bolton as NSA, you actually now have a much more competent and more presidentially aligned group in the White House there and at the State Department than you had before. It probably should work better, really.
Cheryl, both sides say that a president, any president, deserves to have whoever he wants in those kinds of positions. So what's the big deal?
This president had that opportunity when he first took office and when he first appointed a cabinet, and I think he's absolutely demonstrated that he can't select, he can't vet, he can't work with the people that he has. So I think we all need to get used to this game of musical chairs.
Jacob, what is the bigger story this week? The departure of General McMaster and the arrival of Mr. Bolton, or the fact that the president's lead attorney quit this week over disagreements with the president on how to deal with the special counsel?
I feel like the changes in his cabinet ought to be bigger news. But it's worth paying attention to what's happening with the attorney, because long term, those are the type of legal turns and manipulations and maneuvers that may lead to what Rod was sort of referencing, which was you really don't want to see the president, if you're a supporter of the president, getting caught up in some type of legal trap and testifying in situations. It is very unlikely that Donald Trump is going to be any more contained on a grand jury stand than he is when he's sitting at 4 in the morning on his cell phone.
Isn't it just, again, a further indication of the way Donald Trump approaches things and perhaps the way Donald Trump governs or makes decisions? He can't stay with a legal team in the Russia investigation. He can't stay with a cabinet member. It's just representative of Donald Trump's personality.
Okay. Talking about the Russia investigation per se, Cambridge Analytica, this is an organization that went to work for the Trump campaign, worked for Ted Cruz beforehand, got a hold of so many of our backgrounds from Facebook. It is a mess there. And Rod, as someone who is interested in good campaigning and good elections, does any of this trouble you?
Not at all, because this is, as somebody that also works in social media and understands how social media works and how Facebook makes money, this is what we would be expecting from campaigns. As a matter of fact, it's not so dissimilar from what President Obama brilliantly did, his team did in 2012. Data mining off social media is the way to run campaigns and the way to target people. Right. And that's what they did. All that information is voluntarily given to Facebook.
That's right. But here is where it ties into the Russia investigation, because the question, Cheryl, becomes whether Facebook ads by Russian bots were directed by the information that the Trump campaign got from Cambridge Analytica and perhaps the Russians.
And apparently now we know that some of the players were working for the Russians. But you know, I'm going to be somewhat sympathetic to what Rob is saying. If you go on to social media and you find what your constant stream of information is, don't be surprised that it tells you what you want to hear. It's the question that I think gets your attention is Facebook's role in providing that information.
And Jacob, is anybody that you know around here on the Suncoast becoming, you know, this is the end of Facebook, or really care about what they're hearing this week?
I do think people care about their privacy, and I certainly think that what Cheryl was just noting about Facebook's role in this being a bigger issue than any political operation is significant. I think people care about their privacy. You just saw Rihanna tweet something to turn everybody off Snapchat, and that affected the stock of Snapchat last week. So that's what's going to happen.
All right, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back. We'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. Stay with us. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. I'm going to lump two things together. A new poll that says by Quinnipiac that by a 55-42 margin, people say President Trump does not have a good sense of decency. And that comes to, you know, together with growing concern about how the Republicans will do in the midterm, the number of Republican retirements, and Larry Sabato writes, because seats lacking and incumbent are more difficult to fill for the incumbent party to retain, the situation should be deeply worrying to the GOP. Rod?
Right, so it is, obviously, because the average loss in a president in power's first term, midterm, is like 2 or 3 more seats than the Republicans' majority right now. So that alone is one big indicator. The things you mentioned, the Pennsylvania race that was plus 20 for Trump that the guy picked up. The thing is, that was 2 Republicans running. One had a D after his name, if you look at the campaigns of them. So there's some counter issues there that I think run against it. And one is, typically Americans are very big on voting their pocketbook. If the economy is really strong, tax cuts have kicked in, so the president's given them a raise, the Republicans have given them a raise, deregulation continues. If you don't have major war on the Korean Peninsula or something, which actually could benefit, but if you don't have that, the economy itself could be a counter indicator to these other ones.
All right, so Cheryl, let me put it to you, because you know, Democrats like yourself around here are energized. You're looking forward to the midterms, but on the other hand, people say, you know what, my wallet's a little bit thicker than it used to be.
Well, but you need to pay attention all the way through November. Not having war in the Korean Peninsula doesn't look nearly as likely. The not part of it doesn't look nearly as likely. Stock market has just had the worst 2 weeks in 2 years. A trade war would be devastating to the economy. Jobs, who knows? We certainly saw fewer jobs created in the first year of the Trump administration and the last several years of the Obama administration. So pay attention all the way through, and there may be big motivation for changing.
What are the odds of a real Democratic wave on the Suncoast, Jacob?
I think you need to look at it race by race. I say that anybody who's running in a district where Trump won by less than 10, you're going to have a real competition going on. If it's less than 5, it may very well end up being rich Democrat territory.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired, just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Rod Thompson of the RevolutionaryAct.com, Cheryl Wilson, the chair of the Manatee Democratic Party, and Jacob Ogles, political editor of SRQ Magazine.